Hello. What conclusions may be drawn from the fact that God is the Father of men? This is the title of Chapter 3, Book 1 of Epictetus' Discourses. And this is a very short little discourse that I've put a lot of thought into because it's very short, but there's a lot of information in this little small discourse. So, first of all, when here we're speaking of God in Epictetus' time, this would have meant Zeus, because actually in the discourse itself, he mentions that Zeus is the father of gods, all the other gods, and men. So we're not really talking about the Christian God as we in the U.S. Well, not just the Christian God, I guess, but the God that's culturally assumed to be what we're talking about when we're talking about God today is not exactly the same sort of thing that Epictetus would have talked about, but the meaning is more or less the same. And so Epictetus talks about, I'll tease out, I think, because parts of this I have some trouble with, and parts of it I think is very enriching. So first I'll sort of tease out what I think is so enriching about this discourse, and then talk a bit about how I would interpret it differently today. I think what's enriching about it, the example that Epictetus gives is that what if you got adopted by, he uses the example of Caesar. So let's, for the purpose of this exercise, use someone like you got adopted by someone extremely wealthy in the world. I don't know who's a wealthy family. One of the wealthiest family, Bill Gates. You got adopted by Bill Gates of Microsoft. A person would get adopted by Bill Gates. He might feel arrogant, that he had really risen in station in the world, and yet ignore the fact that he was a son of Zeus, or a son of God, meaning part of humanity. And I think that, because in his view, this would elevate you higher than being the adopted child of a rich person. So I think that's really mindful, really important to stay mindful of, how beautiful it is to be part of humanity. And he goes on to discuss about, what's beautiful about being part of humanity. In his view is, our rationality. And then that's what sets us, our consciousness. We are conscious beings, conscious portions of humanity. And so, I believe this is very enriching. He does use, though, what I find troublesome about this particular discourse is he compares our animalistic type traits as abhorrent. And I think in Epictetus' time, the Stoicism of ancient time, I think this is kind of a really good example to me personally of something ancient. Not everything that's ancient is golden. I mean, we always need to be mindful if we're reading something written today currently, if we're reading something written in the 19th century, if we're reading something written 2,000 years ago, that we always need to be mindful of how we're interpreting that and not just take that as a truth. And I can't really agree with this idea of the animal nature being abhorrent. I understand. I interpret this today, meaning our sort of unthinking, reactionary thinking. He uses things like greed and these sort of negative emotions like anger and violence and things like this. Yes, okay, so we need to, strive towards a better our better nature, the better portions of our consciousness. But I think that actually humanity is actually enriched today by our knowledge of our kinship with animals. And he specifically says in the Discourse, that this is sort of a hierarchical, like we're sinking, we're lower when we're behaving like an animal. And I think we have this terminology a lot today. I just don't necessarily think that's necessarily helpful, because I think it's discounting a lot of what we know about animals, because animals are also rational beings. They behave rationally in their own world. Or else they wouldn't be able to survive. And so this is something we understand today that maybe Epictetus didn't necessarily see in his time. So I don't really think that it's helpful to think of elevating our rationality is elevating us to God, and our these bad traits of violence and things are animalistic, and aligning us with animals. That kind of dichotomy, that kind of dualism, I don't necessarily adhere to today. But I still think this discourse can be interpreted in light of a human understanding that what a fantastic gift, I guess we could say, it is to be alive and be conscious and be operating in the world today. And I think it's a gift to be alive and conscious and operating in the world today, right alongside our non-human animal kinsfolk that we live on the earth with. I think that's incredibly enriching. But I do understand what he's trying to say about we are conscious beings, part of a greater whole. And so that's a wonderful connecting concept to really grasp. And so I think if we spend a little time remembering that daily about how we're connected to the whole, and we're here, we're conscious, we're connected to all of humanity, we're operating in our consciousness alongside our fellow humans, as well as our non-human animal kin that are also conscious, rational beings themselves, then I think that's an incredible, enriching way to connect to the world. So kind of a short discourse today. The next one is called On Progress or Moral Advance, which will be chapter 4 of book 1. So that'll be next. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.